Ubisoft dropped their newest title, XDefiant, not too long ago. It's gone by many names so far: the COD Killer, Old COD, and so on. But it seems there's a huge divide as always on whether it truly is a COD killer. I think everyone can agree that XDefiant is similar to COD in many ways, especially since the man behind the original Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 games is one of their main contributors. I want to talk about XDefiant's position in gaming while going over its arguments in the community, as well as some other topics we'll get to later. I've been watching a lot of videos about people's opinions on XDefiant. Many videos are by COD fans and many by COD haters. There's also everything in between. I felt like the perspectives were too shifted in favor of one game or the other, which led me to wanting to make my own take on this. Before I give my takes though, I want to preface everything with my experiences. I've been playing COD and video games in general since I was probably 5 years old, give or take a year or two. My first multiplayer COD game was actually the original Modern Warfare. I was 8 years old at the time. Every single COD game that came out since Modern Warfare, all the way to Infinite Warfare and Black Ops 4, is a game I played. I have plenty of experience with COD games, and I've sunk countless hours of my time into all of the COD games. My favorite is Black Ops 2, with any of the games before it being top tier games for me. Excluding COD, I have also played tons of other FPS games: Battlefield 1.4, Bad Company 1 and 2, MAG, Counter-Strike, TF2, Overwatch 1 and 2, Apex Legends, and more are just a small sample size of FPS games I've played. Through my personal experiences playing the older titles and comparing them to modern titles, I can hopefully formulate a good outlook on XDefiant. My first time playing XDefiant was during the most recent beta about a little over a month ago. I honestly hated it. Everyone was saying it was like old COD, but to me, I couldn't even begin to see the similarities. There are abilities and factions to choose, no kill streaks, and game modes I'd expect to see in Overwatch. While playing, I felt like a lot of my controls weren't smooth, and I couldn't properly play a shooter game. It honestly amazed me how many people were singing its praises while I felt like the game was just going to be another run-of-the-mill clone. I played a few hours of the game with my dad before I called it the worst FPS experience I've had in a while, and I play Overwatch sometimes. That all changed when the full release dropped. Well, at least the preseason. I gave the game another chance days after the full release dropped when a friend wanted to try it. The difference in feeling when I played the first game was already enough for my opinion to change drastically. When I shot people, I felt like, for the most part, my bullets were actually connecting. When I moved my mouse, it actually followed where I was pointing properly. Guns I thought didn't do anything at all in the beta were now feeling useful. Credit to the devs for getting all that done in what, a month? Of course, as I played more and more, I started to feel a lot of the issues many people talk about the game having. Some of these things were gameplay, some were the shop, and some were other random complaints about something related to the game. I want to talk, or rant a little, about what I've personally heard people say and give my take on those topics. The most COD-like aspect of the game lies within the feel of combat, in my opinion. Old COD progression was obtaining new unlockables, such as guns, by leveling up your player level. XDefiant isn't exactly like that. You have to unlock guns by completing challenges, excluding the starter weapons and the battle pass weapon currently out in the preseason. Old COD didn't have factions that had abilities. You may be able to argue selecting perks on your creator class was somewhat similar to choosing your ability, and your ult is sort of like a kill streak or score streak in a way, but it's not exactly the same. There were no cosmetics and battle passes like current day games. Rather, there were map packs for $15 every so often. Aside from all that, the biggest comparison is the flow of gameplay. Gameplay is what feels like old COD. Of course, the abilities might disrupt a bit of that feel, but the movement and shooting feels very similar to old COD. In my opinion, old COD sound effects were a huge part of the old COD feeling, and XDefiant doesn't deliver on that too much. However, jumping a small corner, flanking, and gunplay can be very nostalgic feeling when you play. Hold on though. Some of you probably heard the movement was similar and immediately thought of jump spamming, sliding into jump spam, and b-hopping left and right in the air. Well, we'll get to that, so hold on for a sec. It begs the question, is this game really a COD killer? In my opinion, no. This game modernizes, some good, some bad, the old COD feel. Some people compare this game to Overwatch as well, and while I understand the escort mode and picking characters might feel like Overwatch to an extent, they are definitely way different outside of that. XDefiant lands in between old COD and Overwatch, definitely leaning more into COD than Overwatch. What I do think is fair to say is that XDefiant can most certainly have a place next to COD and Overwatch. COD isn't just a game people play for specifically multiplayer anymore, especially since many people only play multiplayer to level up their weapons for other modes. A massive part of the game is Warzone, and another part of the player base loves zombies. Campaign is a bit slept on now, but that's basically 4 entire modes that most games don't cover all in one like COD. How could XDefiant just kill COD with only multiplayer competition, especially against COD's biggest fans? What XDefiant has going for it though is that it hits COD right in its weak point, the multiplayer. Skill-based matchmaking. Everyone knew this was coming up eventually. Skill-based matchmaking, whether you like it or hate it, has definitely divided modern competitive game player bases. Newer COD player bases, and modern games in general, in my opinion, have become a sweat fest. Use the meta weapon, meta character, meta build, and whatever else you can get that's meta, is the base standard of today. On top of the fact that gaming is more popular in 2024 than it was 10 plus years ago, we have a ton of competition. The benefits on paper of skill-based matchmaking is that it'll try to level the playing field of the players in the game. That makes it sound like every game they'll try to place you with people of your own skill level, so the games will be close and everyone will feel satisfied with their performance. However, a lot of the time it might actually end up with the opposite. I started playing COD multiplayer in the original Modern Warfare when I was only about 8 years old. I knew how to use the controller from other games, but I essentially improved myself and my skill through just playing and learning. That meant while I started out not doing so well in my games, I would eventually and gradually get better and better to the point that even as an 8-year-old, I could be on top of the list. And that's in any given lobby at any given time. That was before skill-based matchmaking was a thing. Getting better at the game was only hard work and learning. Now, to give a small counterpoint to what I said earlier, even as far back as the original Modern Warfare, you could probably pin something that was meta. From what I can remember, the OG MP5 was the tryhard weapon of that game. So in a way, there will always be something that will be overall better than most options, because balance is nearly impossible, if not completely impossible, to attain in game development. That goes for all games, not just FPS games like COD. However, the reason this relates to SBMM is how people feel playing the game. The most recent iteration of COD multiplayer I personally played was the new Modern Warfare 2. When I started out, I was dominating lobbies with whatever guns I wanted. As I played, it increasingly got harder to dominate as hard with just whatever gun I felt like using or whatever class. Eventually, if I wasn't using the best movement, my best gun, and sweating, then it was going to be a long game. Occasionally, I would do bad. Then, they'd put me in a game where I destroyed. But after that one game, it was back to sweat festing. Playing with friends became a nightmare too because, to be honest, I was better than a lot of them. And the people we played against were too good for their skill level. I'm sure anyone on SBMM will be able to share a similar experience as this. I know I've heard this plenty. This doesn't even include even deeper insight into skill-based matchmaking. There's a common belief that it goes even deeper than just a skill rating to determine games. Throughout forums on the internet, you can see threads about skill-based matchmaking rigging games to the point where if you do too good, they nerf you mid-game by making you do less damage, or by buffing your enemy by making them unkillable like Roadhog in Overwatch 2. I won't personally comment on this because I didn't play enough multiplayer in COD Modern Warfare 2, and I haven't even played Modern Warfare 3, so I don't know what Modern Warfare 3 feels like on release or any time up to the current day patch. Now, to address the other side of the argument, no SBMM for some people feels terrible apparently. Some people will complain how no SBMM still broods sweats, and it makes the game unfun. Their counter argument is, funnily enough, that people who complain about no skill-based matchmaking are just bad. The developers themselves, I believe, even commented something like that. In my opinion, they're probably right. What you don't hear often enough is that it's okay to be bad. The point of no skill-based matchmaking is that you can hop into any game and improve until you become the guy who does good. This way, casual players can play against other casual players often, and even if they never improve somehow, they will still be able to have fun not sweating all the time. On the other hand, most people will probably improve and still have fun. For the top sweats, you will still be able to get your games of dominating lobbies. Best part of this system is that if you're doing terrible and you feel like it's because the other team is six stacking the best possible meta weapons or other stuff in their creative class, you can just go to the next game and you don't even have to worry about that last game, because unlike COD, every game can be completely different than the last. The point is that every single game will not feel like you're doing your best just to scrape by a measly one victory. In my opinion, skill-based matchmaking does have its place in games. Skill-based matchmaking is ranked mode. In ranked modes where competition is the main goal and skill ratings matter, skill-based matchmaking has the perfect place to thrive. Obviously, this is a loaded topic with a lot of debate, so I'm sure many people will have differing opinions. However, all I want to say is that if you do like skill-based matchmaking, just stay on COD. As I said earlier, I think it's totally fine for these games to coexist, and hopefully it makes both games improve through competition, as well as any other game that tries to be similar. Last but not least, to all the new COD players that started in the more modern versions of COD, old COD did not have SBMM. Skill-based matchmaking did not make COD what it is today, and it definitely isn't its key to success. Aside from its comparisons to COD, XDefiant has other conversation topics and takes to go over, the first one being movement. Movement in XDefiant has become a hot topic, specifically jump spam, also known as B-hopping, and sliding. If you've played XDefiant, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Jumping carries a lot of momentum on the first jump, so jumping around a corner while aiming can get the drop on a lot of enemies before they even have a chance. On top of the initial jump, you can keep jumping to move your hitbox, or even change directions in the air while multi-jumping to make it hard to hit. Feel like switching it up? Slide around a corner. Carry the momentum that way instead. Feel even more creative? Slide a corner, then get up and jump around. If all that is still not enough, pull out your secondary to move even faster and don't even try to shoot back. Just jump and slide and see if the other guy can even hit you. In my opinion, it's too annoying. If what I heard is correct, jumping will be slightly nerfed to where spamming it won't be as crazy as it is now. If that happens, I feel like it wouldn't be too bad, because I don't mind sliding a corner or jumping a corner on its own. When enemies just jump side to side like crazy in the middle of the open, and it doesn't even really make it harder to aim for them, it gets a little ridiculous. When I do it, it doesn't feel rewarding at all. Some gun sway in the air and a little less flight control might go a long way, because it just might be a little too crazy to take away that entire movement. It'll possibly ruin the skill ceiling. Having a balance where it's harder to control but rewards you for being good at it might help calm some anger down for the movement. Truthfully though, there are still a good amount of people out there that just don't want any kind of movement like that at all. Let me know what you think. The next big thing to bring up would be sniping. Sniping has been another controversial topic in the community. Sniping in COD has been a staple for as long as it has existed with multiplayer. Quickscoping and no-scoping used to arguably be a sport of its own in COD. When it comes to balance though, we all know snipers in video games are one of the hardest things to balance. Nobody likes shooting a guy 7 times with their AR, and then the next guy survives with 1 health because he looked in your direction, hit you 1 time in the leg with a sniper. Meanwhile, sniper players don't want to play a game where they hit you in the chest and get a hit marker while you proceed to delete them with your SMG. So, where is the balance? Is there a balance? It's hard to say. I don't want snipers to lose their one-shot capabilities, but there has to be some skill to it. I picked up sniping in XDefiant for maybe a game or two, and I found that it was not that hard to get into a flow with it. To me, that means someone who's really sniping, like every game, they're probably going to be able to hold spawn by themselves, just one-shotting people from anywhere. Well, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I think you get the point. From what I hear, the next biggest change to snipers will be flinching when getting shot. As of now, snipers just have perfect scoped in aim. If you get shot while sniping, your character just sits there, and he just takes it. No movement at all. I think flinch is definitely necessary, and it's the first step I would have taken to kind of combat the snipers being OP. But hopefully flinch could solve a lot of those problems by itself, because it might be hard to balance it without making snipers completely useless. Tell me if you have a better idea. Aside from those two things, netcode. Netcode and hit detection in XDefiant overall isn't the worst in my opinion. It was the main thing that drove me away in the beta though. In the preseason, I find it actually pretty good. I'd be lying to say it's perfect, but I thought it was alright. I know if you have played any amount of this game, you have been fully behind a wall and still died. And I definitely know if you had any type of playtime in this game, you got phantom hits where you get a hit marker but no damage. We already know the devs talked about improving the netcode, and it's always something that's gonna be improving, but I guess for now we should just wait, stick it out to Season 1, and see if there's anything to complain about then. The Echelon and DeadSec Spider abilities. Echelon is the famous faction with the ability complained about the most, at least from what I've heard. Intel on Echelon can feel extremely broken at times when playing XDefiant. A 30-second cooldown to gain wall hacks in a decently big area around you for the entire team. Now combine that with the fact that you can have multiple echelons and you have infinite wall hacks, sort of. One solution talked about is capping the amount of one faction you can have on a team. Personally, I agree with that. I don't think it has to be as extreme as capping it to 2 per faction and separate abilities leading to only one person being able to use the intel ability, but just maybe a limit of 2 per faction overall would help so that there's only 2 intels on the map at all times. Nerfing the intel to only be for you might also help the balance, but it could definitely hurt the team play aspect of Echelon, since the other ability is also pretty selfish, as well as the ult. It's something that needs to be experimented with for sure, but I do think it's a little crazy to have a team with constant wall hacks on. On top of that, their ultimate ability is a one-shot pistol, depending on where you hit your target, of course, and wall hacks again. We'll talk about ultimates in a little bit. Another honorable mention is the DeadSec Spider. Right now, it's confirmed to be bugged and hopefully fixed in Season 1 release. It's really hard to destroy right now since it doesn't always attach to the faces properly, and it's glitched on the ground where you can't really shoot or melee before it attaches to your face. It probably won't need a nerf since it's supposedly going to be easier to deal with after bug fixes, but it definitely deserves to be mentioned. Now speaking on ultimates in XDefiant, in my opinion, should work like the Phantom faction. You gain a decently big shield barrier and a half sphere around you. The weapon you get while you're in the sphere is also limited to the range of your shield. So even though you get this damage immunity around you and a one-shot weapon, it limits your access to range. This makes it a trade-off that can still be powerful if used properly, like on an objective or to take certain space on the map. The flamethrower on the cleaners is also very strong, but once again, you sacrifice range. If you use it in the wrong spot, you could just get sent back to spawn before you even get any use out of it. On the other hand, you could be a massive threat to an objective if you get on it for a recapture and burn everyone down that's on it. In my opinion, Libertad, DeadSec, and Echelon ults feel like they don't fit the same way. To be honest, this could just boil down to my preference, so take it with a grain of salt. However, these other 3 factions have ults that just don't really have a downside, like the other 2 do. Libertad's healing circle ult just goes on the floor, and it's practically invincibility to an extent. If you're not ulting to counter it or pumping a massive burst damage hit on anyone in it, they will not die. What is the weakness to it? Just that it's a small radius? With proper usage, that's not even really a weakness. Best counter is to just leave that area and let the ult pass, which isn't always possible on objective modes. Echelon's ult's weakness is, I guess, supposed to be the pistol? If you're once again playing correctly, then you're gonna take the advantageous fight. You can see everyone through walls, so just don't go in the middle of the open in long range distance, which you could still technically win at. And is it still a weakness? Last but not least, DeadSec ult just disables all ability and ultimate usage in an area, so they can just pop it and it's doing something. There's not really a drawback. I guess it has a range, but you know, you're gonna pop it somewhere where get the most use out of it. So is it really a drawback? Ultimates don't have to have a drawback, but I feel like this inevitably leads to some ults just being better than others. While we're on the topic of ultimates, I figured it'd best talk about perks and kill streaks now. Many people from the COD community believe these two additions would make XDefiant better. Or do they? Are they just trying to make the game more like COD? Probably. I think the common consensus of XDefiant players is that the game doesn't really need kill streaks or perks, because they're sort of already in the game. Faction abilities and ultimates cover the perk and kill streak additions respectively. Choosing your faction ability is essentially choosing your perks. You get a passive ability and an active ability. Then your ultimate is essentially a kill streak. You get your ultimate by playing the game. In that sense, I guess it's more of a score streak, but same difference really. All in all, I can't see them adding anything more than just maybe a mini perk on a create a class or something similar. On to playing the objective, another big topic in the community. What do a lot of people playing COD multiplayer do in a match? Well, if you said getting high kill counts, you'd be right. In fact, it's easy to argue that most people in COD would rather play for KD instead of the win, just so that they can flex their stats to their friends or the internet, I guess, to look really good at the game. However, someone with a high KD doesn't always have a high win-loss ratio. In a game like XDefiant, where team play with abilities and different objective-based modes exist, it's kind of hard to just get kills all the time. If you think you're the better player just because you get a higher KD than the guy who has a lower KD with a high objective time, then you've got the wrong idea entirely. Even in COD, the objective is meant to be played. However, most people just don't care, and they just want to get kills. XDefiant isn't COD. You should be playing the objective. Anyone who feels like they die a lot because they're playing the objective and getting targeted for being there, I feel for you, because I've been there. Just know that you are the only one playing the game right, and in most cases, you're probably single-handedly winning the game for your team. If everyone else doesn't play the objective, that is. You know, outside of the deathmatch-based modes, of course. Another classic debate in gaming is always graphics. I feel like there are too many people that complain about graphics. Every FPS game does not have to have realistic graphics if it's a militaristic type shooter. We know COD pushes the limits of graphics to the extent. Do you know what else COD does? Pushes our storages to the limit. COD wants us to go for the most realistic, insane 8K Ultra HD graphics, and that's fine. You know who doesn't? XDefiant. The game looks great. It's not our fault that COD is always trying to be the biggest graphically enhanced game. Stylized graphics, in my opinion, are always better than just going for realism. Outside of graphics, performance is another quick topic. I've not personally dealt with many issues performance-wise. I get a stable, I want to say solid like 60 to 80 while I'm gaming at 4K. So I can't imagine there are a lot of problems at lower resolutions. I've run into 2 crashes. I'm about 8 hours, a little over 8 hours of playing. So 2 I feel like isn't that bad, especially playing at 4K when most games crash on 4K all the time for me. So I'm not going to complain too much on XDefiant crashing. I'll show you a clip of the crash since I happened to record the game it happened in. So as you saw from that clip, it wasn't really a crash, it was more like a freeze, but you know, same difference. And the first time that it actually happened to me, it was a whole crash where it logged the game out for me. I went back to my desktop and it made me send a crash report. So 2 times in all. Like I said, not going to complain too much. Just thought it was something to note, especially if hopefully in Season 1 it gets better. Otherwise, it might be another point to talk about in the future. But for now, that's pretty much it on the performance. We've been talking a lot about gameplay. Let's leave that aside for now and talk about our last thing, monetization. Monetization is always going to be a topic for gaming. XDefiant and Ubisoft in general are no strangers to this. With a battle pass and store like any other game, what does XDefiant have to offer? The answer is, unsurprisingly, a very expensive model for monetization. Let's start with the good though. The battle pass, I believe, gives you back the amount you spend on it. Cosmetics are also optional and don't affect the gameplay at all. Most importantly, the battle pass weapons are not locked and are available for free once you hit that tier in the battle pass, which is also usually early as of now in the preseason. Now, onto the controversial topic. Basic skins are upwards of $10, and unlike its COD counterpart, which admittedly also isn't great, it doesn't even include anything else in a bundle or anything. A soul weapon skin of low tier is a whole $10. That is, in my opinion, atrocious. Thankfully, it is cosmetic only, because I would have to count this as a terrible downside of the game. Hopefully in the future, it's toned down a bit, since admittedly, I'd like to support the game and get skins, as I've always been a skin buyer in games. I think at the end of the day, it's fair to say that XDefiant has a fighting chance. What's most important right now is the direction they take the game. If they keep listening to the community and make decisions that show improvement and consideration, then the game can thrive. There is definitely a community out there that wants a COD-like game not made by Activision. There are too many people arguing in bad faith on both sides, and I want to try and have level-headed discussions about potential issues and comparisons the game faces. I would love to hear your feedback about any impressions you had about this video, or if you'd rather let me know some feedback about the video itself. I'm a new content creator and would love any support shown to me. If that's all you came for, then you can just leave the video now, otherwise I'm just going to leave the gameplay running for anyone who wants to actually finish the gameplay.
Mission update. Time is running out. Five, four, three, two, one. Our zones in the hostile just did. It's a milk run. Gotcha, kill.
Barrier deployed.
Capture zone contested.
Sticky out! Don't make me play.
Capture zone secure. We're close to beating their progress. Don't stop now. Capture zone contested. That's how Shadow Team does it. Of course you're the best. You're a phantom.